without further ado, let me introduce our fabulous speakers today. I am so lucky because these are two of my favorite people, so that's really nice. Starting with Steve Lack. Steve has produced podcasts for NPR, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Al Jazeera. He started Steve Lack Audio to help independent producers create podcasts and audio books, which is so cool. And he's a board member of Women in Film and Video and the supervising producer of their weekly and awesome podcast, Media and Monuments. So we know he's a big supporter of advancing equity in our industry. And some of his recent podcasts are Dating While Gray, hosted by Laura Stassi, Our Body Politic with Farai Chideya, and the podcast reversions of Warner Brothers Discovery Television's Expedition Unknown. That is a tongue twister. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
Cheryl Ottenritter is the senior mixer and founder of Otthouse Audio, where she makes every production sound better. I can tell you that from personal experience, thanks to her more than 20 years of audio post-production expertise. She's got degrees in jazz study and theory and composition at Auburn University, and I will tell you she is still an amazing jazz pianist because sometimes I get to jam with her. And she's mixed projects for PBS, National Geographic, Smithsonian Channel, and Discovery Channel. Her recent award-winning credits include The Laws of the Lizard, The River and the Wall, Hidden Pacific, and Harry Potter, The Exhibition. And another cool thing about Cheryl is she specializes in mixing for Dolby Atmos and creates installed immersive sound experiences. Like when I went down to the new African American Museum in Charleston and got to hear several of her exhibits in person, which was cool. And when she launched home theater Dolby Atmos mixing suite at Otthouse Audio, it was the first one of its kind on the East Coast. So she's a trailblazer. Welcome, Cheryl.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and I'm snowed in at home today. Well, kind of. It was too icky to go out today.
I know, but you and I can meet in the middle of the street and
yes. Exactly.
Have a glass of hot cocoa. Cheryl lives literally on my street, which is pretty cool.
It's very cool. Thanks,
so
Amy,
let me start with you, Cheryl. What are you working on right now that's exciting?
Wow, this year is coming off to a really, really big start. I'm just finishing a feature doc on wolves in the Denali Park.
Ooh,
to
wolves.
be seen.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and it was it's a really nice doc. I'm really proud of that. And then moving on to a shorter doc with a local director about January 6th and the public defenders that defend them, and then doing a short bird doc following that, and then hopefully doing a documentary about Carl Jackson, the first African-American caddy at the Masters. So all before March, hopefully. So.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And then I'm going to try to lure you to NAB. So in April, even before you've recovered.
I'll be recovered. It's fine. It's all spaced out just perfectly. I've got a couple holes in there to fill.
Those sound awesome. How about you, Steve? What's on your plate right now that's fun and exciting?
At first, I thought Cheryl said all before lunch, and I'm like, yeah, that's Cheryl.
That does sound kind of like Cheryl.
Well, today I'm working on the APM, an hour-long APM special that's an adaptation from our Dating While Gray podcast that's going to be broadcast on American Public Media stations in March, which is really fun. And that's a really cool show. It's a fun podcast about people later in life finding love. So, but it's not just an interview podcast. It's kind of presented as a storytelling. Each episode is a story. So
interesting.
It's a fun podcast to work on. And then as you mentioned, I'm doing some of the Warner Brothers Discovery stuff, which we're starting to kind of move into immersive on some of those. So I'm getting to get into a little bit of Cheryl's wheelhouse and get my feet wet with doing some of the immersive. We're not doing Atmos stuff. We're doing ambisonic immersive podcasts right now. So
cool. Okay.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that we're doing immersive podcasting for Wondery right now. They're Against the Odds series. So.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Cool. All right, and don't forget, if you have questions about audio and, really post-production workflow, also, I think these two know a lot about both of those things. Feel free to throw them in the chat and I'll pick up your questions as we go. Okay, so I want to get into some tools here and maybe some new ones. So I'm curious, what are some of the tools that you're relying on to create the best possible sound? Let's start with audio first podcast. Steve, want to throw in some tools you're using?
Yeah. Since with audio first podcasts, a lot of times you're doing, the proverbial someone sitting in their living room using a MacBook Air mic, even though you ask them to put on headphones and use a USB mic. So the first thing you got to do is clean things up a bit. So I've been using, I've switched for podcasts for storytelling first, audio first podcast. I kind of switched my DAW from Pro Tools to a program called Hindenburg Pro. And Hindenburg Pro has some built-in noise reduction plugins, and it also does auto leveling. And they have a thing called magic levels, where if you have two people if you get two people kind of talking at the same time, it'll sort it out. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot of AI tools built into Hindenburg Pro, but one of the plugins that I've been using lately is DX Revive, which is sort of my first step to kind of cleaning out some of the room noise, background noise. There's several other plugins. There's Acon Dereverberate 3, and I think Cheryl's going to talk about some of these as well. That gets rid of a lot of room noise. But lately, what I find really interesting, the first step I've been taking with some of these podcast recordings is throwing them up in the Adobe Podcast AI, Adobe tool. I think it's called Adobe Podcast Tools. And it uses AI to kind of clean it up, do a lot of the things. And this conversation started between Cheryl and I when I first saw those tools, and I said, wow, this is going to put people out of work. So which we can kind of get into a little bit, but I've actually adapted my thinking lately, and now I realize that they're just tools that can help me do my job better.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I wish they hadn't called it Hindenburg, but that's the brand. The brand writer in me is like, that seems like a bad brand name, but I guess it's memorable.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Let me just bring Cheryl into this. Cheryl, you mentioned that you're also using a lot of these tools. So tell us, what you're using for more like video first projects, and if that makes a difference, really.
I think it does make a difference in a way that, like, there isn't any onboard levelers or, things like that in Pro Tools, which we're pretty, we use pretty solely, but we do have D-Revive that we use for certain things, especially off camera stuff. Like, you just have to get that bite, and it happens to be that the lob just failed at that moment, and now you're trying to make it sound like they're in the studio or on a lob, and D-Revive does that very well. I prefer Supertones Clear actually to D-Revive for purely cleaning up. As an extra, it also has some D-Reverb built in. But I haven't tried this one out yet, but everybody is like saying that Hush is the creme de la creme. I haven't tried that one yet. Because I mean, you could go broke buying these every day or buying these every week. You just gotta sometimes say no more.
Now, is this something that could only be used in a post workflow? Because I notice Amanda Sapp is one of our attendees, and she's the GM of a radio station, and she's a host on the radio station. Are these things that could be implemented sort of in real time, or is this really in a more of a post workflow?
Well, it depends on how you're using it. Like if you're putting a new noise reducer on, like, say, the voice bus or whatever, like they're in the middle of a cafeteria talking and you're trying to get it a little cleaned up, you could use something like Isotope's voice denoiser live works pretty well. I haven't tried Hush live. Clear does okay live. I don't know if I do D-Revive live unless I have a chance to test it. But you can, but just know that it doesn't work as well
Right,
because it's not AI audio suiting it, rendering it. And two, if you're having any type of sync concerns, you might have to be concerned about that, meaning if it's going
Right.
through this, it's not going to be a lot, it's just going to be a few samples.
Mhm.
But if you have other things in the chain, it could add to that sync issue on live video. So I would be cautious. I definitely do some tests. Can you
Mhm.
use it? Yeah. Are they using things out there now? Yeah, they're definitely using live stuff like that live. But most of these tools are meant for
For post, right. But so what she could do then is she has an interview and she knows that there were like dogs barking or just something really bad happening during the interview.
mhm.
They could apply that before they posted it, on their website.
Hindenburg is actually kind of designed for radio station type use. And so
Mhm.
they have a built-in it's a 1-button noise reduction plugin
Oh, nice.
Oh,
that
that's
you can
nice.
put on a live recording track. The issues you run into is it requires a lot of CPU power to process live. So you got to have Hindenburg's really lightweight and works really well on like MacBook Air and things like that. But if you're doing a bunch of tracks where you have a bunch of noise reduction going on at once, you have to be aware of your CPU usage.
Yeah,
Right, right.
clear is like that a lot.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, since both of you are working on the podcast side as well as sort of docu side and production side, is there something that's changing that you see changing in the podcast world right now?
I can jump in on that because I just got off a session today and just told my wife this story. It's like, I did a session today. Somebody was in Northern Virginia and there's a snowblower going on in the background and they're talking on their MacBook Air mic and, and it's something that, and there's a fan happening and it's something that I would have just called a few years ago, I would have just said, we can't use this.
Right, stop recording.
Yeah.
We'll have to do it another time.
Yeah.
Right.
And today I was just like, that's cool. I'll just clean it up after. It's like,
Wow.
Yeah,
Can you
that's
clean up the snow on my front walk also
yeah,
in the
right.
process?
There's a plug-in for that, I think.
yeah, and that's
I need
something.
that.
Yeah, and that's something else. As a of course, I'm a post person, so it's like, oh, give it to me raw. But like, I really caution against putting on too many effects in live or in recording mode, because it really holds the hands of the person in post not being able to do as good a job because it's
Right.
already been affected. So, and maybe not as well as you think because it was live versus rendered and stuff like that. So,
Right.
I would be really I mean, live, it's totally different situation, but I'd be cautious of throwing on too many effects.
Right. I mean, I guess in a
on set.
perfect world, you get two feeds, one that's raw and one that's got the effect on it, but a lot of people wouldn't be set up for that.
Perfect world. Wow. Yeah,
Right,
no, we
right. That
barely
would be
get one
perfect
feed,
world.
much less two feeds, but yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I think, but the big change is really just that we have this technology now.
Mhm.
And so we're not married to, you don't have to go into the studio to do your interview.
I
Mhm.
think personally the biggest difference, and Hindenburg does this really well. I wish kind of I'm thinking about switching it for audio first stories after talking to Steve, is text editing. I feel that is going to make you a ton faster.
Yeah.
Like, and I just had a meeting with another bigger company who has their own DAW. I can't really say more. And they were asking me kind of like, what features do I want to see in that DAW for podcast editing? And the first thing I said was text-based editing. Like, and the way Hindenburg does it, where the words are right over the waveforms, that is huge. I mean, it's better than a transcript. And and in the script, say for instance, in the script, you can actually literally cut out words and it'll cut the audio for you. And then there's another one getting a lot of hype called Auphonic. I haven't looked at it yet, but it's getting a ton of hype. And for for text-based editing, leveling, everything that you need to do. And I feel like things that will help people get to a better place faster so that they can actually focus on making it even better than just okay, because so many people struggle to get to okay, but this will help it elevate everything. But I would say text-based editing is probably my top one for podcast. work.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
and for storytellers, that's an amazing advancement. 'Cause-
Storyteller, I have to look
Yeah.
at that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't keep up. I mean, like I made a cheat sheet today so that I could keep everything straight a little bit because it changes every day, literally.
It does.
Uh.
I know. It's like one of the reasons I hate teaching workshops that relate to like any kind of software tools, because they're always different than what I planned, even just minutes before the workshop. I have to test every link and be sure it didn't just get bought by another company that's now changed all the features or whatever. But I'm curious, you know, when we talk about AI, obviously you're talking about it doing certain things that we're not doing now, or Cheryl's nervous that it might do some stuff that she would like to do a different way. So I'm curious for both of you, start with you, Cheryl, like how is AI helping you do your job better or faster or differently than just a few years ago?
Well, for me, there's two instances recently I can point to. One, we were asked for a demo about a true crime podcast, and that's not something that we have in our wheelhouse. So we had AI create a script. We did AI generated voices using our own voices, cut it together, used AI generated music, and put together a demo in 2 hours
Okay.
of what we could do. And then we added our own sound design, which obviously was an AI. So things like that, I feel was really good. The way I'm using AI the most, honestly, is in two different ways. One is sound design and one is in sound editing, dialogue editing specifically, especially in the documentary world. Sometimes that one take, whatever reason, the last word gets chopped off, they get hit, somebody hits the mic, it's irreparable. Even in our world today of AI, it could be irreparable. And in the old days, and of course I still do this, I look for a replacement word, a replacement syllable, a replacement whatever, and edit it in and make it work. Well, now if I can't do that or they don't say it, I just feed their voice into the cloning. I
Wow.
spit back the sentence and I grab the syllable. However, I don't do this, and this is something I really want to say, if I do not have permission in writing from that person and the director, I don't do it.
Right, I know, and
simply don't do it.
even in the old days when we would cut and paste words, I mean,
Mhm.
you know, you've spent a bazillion hours with me in a sound mix.
Mhm.
I mean, we really try to be like authentic to what the person was actually saying. We're not trying to change what they were saying.
Right.
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just for clarification, or maybe they like mispronounced a word or they
Right.
missed a word.
Right.
You know, but we're not trying to change what they're saying. But I agree that you're gonna start needing to have permission. Because that could be a pretty tricky little situation.
Yeah, I don't do it unless I have permission, and then
Right.
at all. And also, on let me see if I can find it real quick. On a synthesize, the D-Revive people, they just came out with an AI ethics statement that I feel is pretty spot on. You can just go to their about page
Who
and
is this again?
I always say it wrong. Ascentize, is that, yeah, Ascentize. It's the same people who do D-Revive.
Okay.
And they came out with a pretty spot on AI audio ethics statement and just over the weekend actually. And
Okay.
it's somehow like I feel like for us as audio professionals, and Steve jump in here, is that just like in Frankenbiting, you don't want to put a sentence together that has every word, so you're making them say something that fits your narrative. You have to make it, especially in documentary, authentic. But like in anything, like I don't want to grab this person's voice and clone it willy-nilly. That's their personal property in a very basic way, right? So
Mhm.
I always have to have permission, and I feel like you're going to start seeing more and more of that in the get-go on contracts, like asking artists to begin with like where their level of permission is for AI. Sorry.
Dang.
Yeah, I found that, the best way to use that from an interview podcast standpoint is a lot of times you'll have a guest who basically is a great guest and they're talking and giving you a lot of information, and they'll answer a question that you didn't ask. So I'll clone the host voice and plug the question in the edit. And then of course I'll go back to the host and say, can you say this, or do you want to do it like this?
Okay, see, and that's getting into my territory as a producer, because usually as an interviewer, I will say the questions again at the end of the interview after I've wrapped the other person, that I think would work better.
Yeah, no,
So,
the way we're doing, this is like the conversational, an hour
yeah,
long
no, I know.
conversation that you want to pare down to 10 minutes. And it's
Yeah,
like, I don't want to lose this bit, but there's no setup for it.
right,
That's, I
yeah,
mean, that's
no,
the
I
only,
know.
I've been using the generative AI stuff. I haven't used it for music, and I haven't used it for actually creating real content. I've just been using it for, hey, what if we did this kind of scenarios?
Right, right.
And I've also been using AI cloning for sound design, actually. So like group loops and different things that normally would take a lot of extra time and extra effort and budget. If it's going to be a subliminal newscast with the news announcer, I'll put my husband in the booth, make him say some stuff, clone it, and manipulate it into a newscast. And a low level newscast that's playing on a TV across the room in the sound design portion, you're barely even paying attention to it. But that way you can actually make it relevant to what's happening in the scene instead of just having it be, the peanuts. Wah, 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 wah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
If anybody can find that Accentize announcement, that would be great. I can find other people referencing it, but I can't find the actual announcement, which is kind of funny.
It's on my second page of my cheat sheet. Do you want me
The
to?
actual link. Yeah, well, okay, Ashley, maybe you can find it then and put it in the chat. I don't have that open right now. So one question that I have is, what are some concerns that you have about AI? And maybe the audience has some of these as well. I mean, we've talked about sort of basically remanufacturing somebody's voice to say something that they didn't in fact say. You're getting permission to do that, but that means somebody who doesn't get permission can also do it. Any other concerns? I mean, are you ever concerned, I mean, about like the assets you're getting? For example, like I know we have a contract that we send out that says like these assets, if you're sending us something that we didn't find for you or didn't create for you, that you verify that you own the rights to use it. Do we need to now adapt that to say, and you didn't manufacture something with AI without telling us?
I go ahead, Steve. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say I have kind of a different take on that. Not because I'm not really doing generative AI. I'm using AI to manipulate material. And Cheryl and I have talked about this. Is my concern is that it does a lot of the grunt work that we used to have to do, which means you're hiring less people or less entry level people to
Yeah.
take out breaths.
Right.
And
Or you're billing fewer hours if you're a solo operation.
Yeah, well, you can, but you can bill a little more per hour. But
If you think the
because
market can take it, I don't
yeah,
know.
but
That's a whole other conversation.
yeah, but I mean,
2024 will tell. I mean,
but I mean, I feel like, my first reaction to it was, wow, this is coming for our jobs.
Right.
Because so much of the stuff that I used to do was like, hey, here's some marginal audio. Can you make this sound great? And
Yeah.
now you can you can get it a lot closer. I still contend that you need a professional audio engineer to put their ears on it. So it doesn't sound artificial. So it doesn't sound over processed. Each one of these plugins has their own signature that you want to counter in some way with your own techniques, with EQ or compression or combining multiple plugins. But I feel like what it's eliminating is a lot of the grunt work, which used to be the entry level work that people got into the business through.
Yeah. Yeah. I do feel like that's happening. And it's also what's happening then is it's all being squeezed. The experience is being squeezed. And so that you don't get that crucial experience, training your ears and training like different things to know what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's natural. And and it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. I feel like that's hard for a lot of people entering the industry, whether they're video editors or whoever they are. Audio.
Right. Because the grunt work is kind of how you learn. I mean, that's certainly how I learned. I learned by logging 1,000 miles of 3/4 inch tape. That's how old I am. And even some film clips with real bins, not digital bins. That's how I learned how to do stuff and how to make stories work, and I'm not sure if that was all done magically, if I would have known all the guts of storytelling as much as I do.
Yeah, and actually it leads into my second big concern is that as the standards shift and what's acceptable and not acceptable shift, I mean, it's already shifted tonally, like, or audio wise, like when I get clean audio, a really good location audio, I literally just like, I want to pop a bottle of champagne or something. Like I am
hope
so
that's
excited.
coming from me, because
Yeah,
me,
I mean,
I
but that
care
was
so much about audio. I scout locations just for audio.
I know. And when I get that and I don't have to use an NR tool to make it work or to make it better, I am so excited because then I can use the traditional EQ and compression and different things to make it really sing. So my big concern is that the standard and the idea of what is good is going to be still sliding down.
Right.
And then and then it runs up against the people who may not know because they don't have the experience, and that's nothing wrong. I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying that's an unfortunate part of our business right now.
Right.
And then but I don't know.
I
Well, we
think
have
that's
some
true
younger people
because
on this who are just starting out in the business, so it'll be interesting for them to see if they have to maybe be the people who learn about the new AI tools, and maybe they're the go-to people.
and I think what Cheryl is saying is, basically the old fix it in post is getting more and more relied on now. It's like, well, we didn't get good sound on that take. That's okay. Just like I said earlier, it's like there's nothing I could do about it.
Well, and a great example of that is there's a couple of episodic shows that I watch, and they do a lot of audio on the fly, right? Because they're just jamming a lot of episodes into locations and all that stuff. And there was one scene that was in an empty warehouse, right? It's like, or like an empty floor of an office building, like, with all the exposed hard surfaces, concrete floors, and all this stuff, echoey and all that stuff. The next scene had the same like audio, but it wasn't there. And I was like, something really wrong happened. So what I think happened was they shot an insert shot for another scene while they were in that space. But they forgot to EQ it or fix it in post. So it sounded like it was in a totally different place than all the other shots, because it was just like one tight shot. So they must have like needed a line of dialogue or something, but they shot it in the warehouse scene. And then they were like outdoors or something. I was like, what happened to the birds? Why is this echoing?
Well, and those are the kind of things that, that's what you want your audio person to catch and fix.
Exactly. But they
And
were obviously going straight out. Like, I can't remember, maybe it was more of a reality show, but it was something where they clearly were doing no post.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. I mean, I could go down this road of it being like bad and janky, but every time I can save a syllable, or every time I can like make that voice sing and make it cut through the music and bring my music up and just make the mix better, I'm happy for them. So again, I think it's all like, but what I hear a lot, and it's interesting, post-production expert just had 2 polls on noise reduction where people could listen to the noise and listen to which noise reduction AI tool they liked better on it. And inevitably, I was the lone wolf. Like, I did not like half the stuff on there because I felt like it was too much. Like, somebody just went crazy with that dial, to 100%. And, you're like, yeah, no, that sounds bad.
Too
Am I
much.
the only one? And so I talked to Jeremy, who I work with, and I'm like, did you think some of those sounded bad, or is it just me? Am I really losing it? He's like, oh no. He goes, most of that was just really bad.
yeah,
So
you can
I
get
think,
rid of
yeah.
Yeah, you can get rid of room, but you don't want to get rid of all the room.
No.
No, and you don't want to get
Sounds
rid of the
weird.
voice. You're destroying somewhere in there. You end up starting to destroy the voice.
Well, and I think that this is a whole other session, but we're in such a multi-purpose world now that you really have to be thoughtful about that. And that's why I do like having the raw source material whenever possible, because, you know, usually in my workflow, I might be delivering, like, let's say I'm doing a video opener for a live event, but there's probably going to be a web version. There's probably going to be a short version. There's probably going to be a version where we excerpt sound bites that didn't make it into the final cut that go into reels on social media. I mean, there's going to be like a million deliverables that are not that first thing. And so I'm going to want to go back to those source materials to be sure that I have the most pristine everything visually too, you know. I don't want it to be through lots of filters and what have you. So, but unfortunately, a lot of my clients aren't holding on to that stuff. So that's a whole other session. But at any rate, do we have questions from the audience before we let these guys go and go into our networking zones? Does anybody have a question? Amanda, I know you're in the world of audio. Anybody out there?
I kind of wanted to chime in on what you guys were just talking about.
Hi,
Cheryl, I know.
Danilda.
Hi.
Are we allowed to pin you?
Danilda.
Are you on camera? Yay.
Yeah,
Hi.
here I am. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I'm Danilda. I work with GALSNGEAR, and I'm an independent producer for short format and nonfiction as well. I really resonate with what you guys are talking about when it comes to like the sliding standard and what's going to be expected for entry-level folks. I used to teach college, but even prior to that, I started my career right when we were kind of saying goodbye to film. And what's interesting
You did
is
not. You're way younger than that.
I did. I shot one project on film. And then after that, it was, hey, we're digital, learn this instead. So it's kind of funny to be like, right, you know, at that cross section. And I'm hearing the same thing again. It's the same trepidation about the new technology and the same kind of fear of losing the quality. And I'm with you 100%, Cheryl. I think it's so important to really, as an industry, lift up this next generation as they learn these new tools and use them effectively to tell stories, but not lose the science, the theory behind what natural sound sounds like. And I think it's kind of on us to pass that baton in a way. But I don't think you should be scared. I think as it slides down, then it inevitably kind of bobs back up, right?
Oh, I'm not scared about it. It's just a concern more for the future generations of our craft.
Exactly.
You know, it's not like I feel like that their challenges are going to be different. You know, and also I never worked on film. I never cut tape. I've been a digital gal from the beginning, and I love it. I'm glad that I did. I have a razor phobia, so I would never have made it in audio before then. But anyway, I'm not scared. I probably put that the wrong way. I just feel it is something. It's a cautionary tale.
It is a cautionary thing, and I mean, we lost a lot. Let's face it. When we went from film to 3/4, we lost a lot. We lost a lot visually. We lost a ton audio wise. And then we went to beta, and it got a little better with Betacam SP, but we lost a lot along the way, and we lost a lot of flexibility because we weren't nonlinear anymore. Let's remember, film was nonlinear from the beginning. Then we went into linear, where you had to think about dubbing things down to go back and fix things. I mean, I would never want to return to that nightmare. So sometimes we go backwards before we go forwards.
But you know what?
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%.
I just thought, you know, there's also the other side of this, and Cheryl can really attest to this, is the Dolby Atmos work. That's starting to really take hold, and that requires a great deal of skill, a great deal of experience, great ears, conceptualizing things differently. So I think that's also, you know, the other side of the coin is some of these new technologies are allowing us to do more high quality work.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's a lot, for some reason, I'm finding there's less in the middle, you know, like there's like a lot of low end, you know, I shot it with my iPhone and whatever. And then there's higher end, and like where the middle is getting a little bit squeezed, I think, because it seems like it'll be very quick and dirty and fast to use some of these tools. But in the end, maybe it's not making the product better necessarily. Sometimes you still have to have skill. I'm curious.
Thanks.
I'm curious, Anne, if you're as a DP, Anne, what are you seeing on the audio side of things? Or if you're being asked to do more, that's sort of out of your department, so to speak, like in the old days, we would never ask
Yeah.
a DP to deal with sound, but sometimes.
Yeah, I used to hire somebody to come out and just do the audio side of it for me. And now they're like, I need you to do audio too. And I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's a little more crossover that they want, but you know, it's like all the areas you say, well, if you want it really well done, you got to hire an audio person. But
Well,
I-
also because I
you know-
worry about, if I'm
Yeah.
asking you to do audio, then you're not busy thinking about the visual. or
visual.
the lighting,
Yeah, because
the
it does take,
lenses and everything else.
yeah, it takes like your mental resources away when you're learning and trying to do something that's not, you know, on your regular. So you're like essentially learning on the fly and it's harder. But yeah, it's definitely still an area where I try to push for a person who specializes to come out instead. But yeah, but at the same time, I'm that curious person that wants to know it all, and I'm a musician, so like the audio is
can
really
see
important to me. So yeah, oh yeah.
That's
I'm
awesome.
downstairs because my kids home today were snowed in too. So but yeah, it's definitely one of those areas where like I love learning about it. I just wish I had more time to dedicate to it, you know, a little bit on its own. So maybe that'll be my next career after this one.
She used to be
Yeah.
a gaffer, so she's working her way around.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and
you know.
I'm totally, and you may know more about this than I do. I just heard something about the new Rode mic system that allows, it's almost like an AI ahead of itself thing where it starts to see problems, or if you're about ready to, you know, hit red or whatever, it
Mhm.
adjusts for you
Starts to
and stuff
modulate
like
for
that.
you. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is like, you know, to somebody like me, it's really awesome because it's like I don't have, you know, 20 hands to do it all at once. So if I can
Right.
focus on the image and let that, you know, handle the modulations for me, it's really great. But at the same time, you know, it's like a you know, adding a layer of digital something, you know, to the final product. So what you're getting in post is not going to be as, you know, clean or as raw, you know, as
Right.
what you'd probably love to have.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I-
that kind of stuff is amazing. I remember Sennheiser came out with the I've forgotten what the call sign or whatever they call it, XB something or another. It's a very, you know, one and gun. They have one button. They sync up for lavs, you know, and mic connections. And I got those when I was starting out years ago, and they were perfect because they just run off, you know, whatever channel's open. If the channel gets a little clogged up, it swaps over to a new channel. So you don't have to figure all that side of stuff out. And it's the same kind of thing. It's a little less, you know, figuring it out on its own, but
Mhm.
it tries to prevent peaking and stuff a little bit, you know, on a small level. But yeah, the new ones, like Rode's really way above the game. Like they're killing it. But
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to check out some of those mics. But I was just for one, you know, running guns and like
mhm.
one
Yeah,
person.
if
one
you're in the
person
field on a
crew.
doc team or something, it's that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it could be very helpful.
Yeah.
You know, and Steve brought up Dolby Atmos as that, and a lot of people don't realize that a lot of that in the decoding end of it is a lot of AI going on, where it
Mhm.
actually sees the systems can see your room and play back the way you want it to be played back and stuff like that. So sorry, I digress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're such tech nerds though. It's great. I love it. But let me just wrap us up so that we can just have general conversation, because I know there's some people here who haven't met each other, and I see Asa here. Hi, Asa. It's nice to have you join us. Noemi, there's just some great people who are on here today. Jacqueline and Catherine Dowd. Nice to see you again. So let me wrap this up and just say a couple of things. First of all, thank you to our fabulous speakers. Obviously, if you have follow-up questions, I can connect you with them. They're both great at what they do. So if you do have a podcast you're producing and you need audio work on, or if you have a documentary or show of any kind, both of these people are excellent and you know, highly recommended. So they can definitely make whatever you're doing sound even better. I want to thank our sponsors for supporting us. And I want to mention that if you know somebody who might be a sponsor, even at a very small level, we're happy to have that support because everything we do is volunteer. My company and Dundee Hills puts in a lot of extra work and support, but we can't do it all. So we really need the help of every sponsor. And we have lots of projects going on, and we have lots of live events going on too. So definitely come back for the next virtual event, which is February the 20th here on the Hub. Because it's right after Valentine's Day, we're going to talk about self-care and health for busy professional media pros. So we have to love ourselves. And that's with Carla Prates from Digital Anarchy and Jinsoon Brancalho from GNL. So that's going to be a fantastic session. And Portuguese may be spoken. I'm just giving you a heads up about that because they both speak Portuguese. And also at NAB Show, we've got a bunch of events. So for those of you who may have never come out there, but have kept thinking maybe this is the year, because we have an event on the show floor on Sunday and a happy hour. We've got a party on Monday. That's always a great networking event. And we have our Women's Leadership Summit Tuesday morning. So lots of great networking and learning opportunities with GALSNGEAR and our community. So we'd really strongly encourage you to come out to NAB Show, look at all the cool tech, and meet some great women across the industry in just about every vertical of media and entertainment. So thanks again for joining us. We can wrap up the recording and get a chance to meet each other.